Welcome to a journey through the history of art. We will travel along a timeline from the caves to the 19th century. My name is Dr. Jeanne Willette. Let's begin by making the familiar unfamiliar. By learning how the medieval artisan was trained. Like the Roman artist who was a follower of Greek inventions and the Roman artisan who worked for the engineers, the medieval artist was also in the service of an empire that wanted a specific set of ideas to be conveyed in a conventional manner. Very few individual names surface until the early 14th century when classicism returns. Until then, all the cultural energy will be directed towards great Christian enterprises, building monuments to God. The Roman artist had been a copyist, endlessly mimicking the lost Greek ideal, marrying it awkwardly with the local tastes for realism. Perhaps this copying is why we have fewer named artists in Roman culture, but whatever the reason, artists became anonymous. The medieval artists continued this concept of the master example of copying an already existing canon. Likewise, the old organization of the artist workshop continued into the Dark Ages. In this new culture of spiritual ritual and social conservatism, the medieval artist was tasked with preserving the past. Haunted by the unseemly eroticism of Greek classical art, medieval art, like Roman art, was based upon a compendium of borrowings. Christian art was not original, but was based upon acts of refusals and reactions, refusal of the human body, and the reaction of disembodying the form by rendering it spiritually insubstantial and unanchored to the earth. The role of the artist was to select among available indigenous conventions and to adapt suitable approaches for the needs of religious and government institutions. The artist could practice in many areas, mastering materials that had once played marginal roles, such as illuminated manuscripts, which raised writing, calligraphy, and book illustration to a form of high art. Monasteries and convents gave refuge to the pious and opportunities in artistry for men and women alike. But whether in or outside of religious orders, all the artists were trained in workshops in the time-honored fashion. A young boy would be sent to whichever workshop had an opening. At age 7 or 8, he could be placed as a future wheel maker, wheelwright, or cart maker, cartwright, a sculptor or a painter or a builder. Talent, aptitude, desire were not considered, and a lifetime program of training would begin. From apprentice to journeyman to an independent master, the artisan was expected to copy the master, who, in turn, was copying an expected repertoire of codified poses, gestures, positions, arranged in proscribed scenes. While copying may have stifled any innovation and discouraged creation, following pre-existing prototypes was absolutely necessary, for medieval art had a didactic, educational, informative role in society. In an illiterate culture, when few could read or write, art taught the public civic values and religious stories. To change the medieval artistic style was tantamount to changing the spoken vernacular language, risking incomprehension from the viewers. The medieval role of art was to communicate and teach the illiterate, an extension of the communal activity of building Stonehenge. Art formed society, knitted people together, created shared values and philosophies, as it had always done. But by the 14th century CE, the culture producers were not the entire community, but specialists trained for their special trades. The artisans were organized into guilds, one for each trade, and the union-like organizations both protected the artist and ensured quality. The workshops were hired by secular or religious clients, and all artists were commercial artists for hire, creating products on demand, manufacturing objects according to the client's precise instructions. While some artists ran very successful workshops, it was the art, not the artist, that was celebrated in the community. An artisan was a hired hand and a worker, a laborer who learned a craft and who worked with his hands, whether he built cathedrals, carved the columnar statues for the portals, or crafted the exquisite stained glass windows. For centuries, the artist had come from the lower classes and had remained part of the lower classes until another seismic shift took place. That cultural shift that would be called the Renaissance would once again see the rise of named artists, but that was a little while in the future. First, the cathedrals had to rise, and with them the role of crafts in the arts.